Hey guys, Rex here. Just a quick update as this thing is about to go live on the website. There's a new model of optic coming out, and I suspect it will go quick as they normally do. And in like fashion, I like to give you guys a heads up as a reward for staying here and so you can get a good deal and get your foot in the door. This is the new EP5. This is a 7-30. Now, I got the new specs. This is not posted at the time I'm recording this. Should be posted right as I'm posting this, I would imagine, okay? Oh, so we have the updated specifications, the EP, I believe it's going to be called the EP5, okay? Now, darn it, let me double check. Because there's a few different ones they had. Raw stream of consciousness post here, guys. Sorry about that. But there was, hold on a minute here. Is it the EP5? EP5 Gen 2. Okay, now this, according to the updated specifications that I just received through some back channels, is the magnification will be 7-35 power on this. So this is an ELR configured scope. This will be kind of made for those guys doing target shooting, maybe bench rest F-class, extreme long range shooting, varmint hunting, okay, potentially. I mean, we'll read some more of the specs here and get a better idea of what we're looking at. Now, I heard this is utilizing more Japanese technology, and that this is their new, oh, just got a message in here. I think he's just literally answering the question now, so stand by. I don't know if you heard that was me. Japanese glass. Okay, so it is Japanese glass. Okay, so this is utilizing the same control group, the same robust mechanisms that you're going to be familiar with in the EP series. The EP series, I already reviewed the 5-25 a couple years ago. Man, did people get emotional about that. People are married and they identify with their expensive kit. And so I know people are going to be emotional who identify with their special kit like teenagers do. I'm all about facts, not feelings. I'm all about testing the function and quantifying the actual results. So this new model here is utilizing the same construction, the same control group that we've come to. Man, every time I've tested those, they're really precise. Like they are on par with the tier 1 stuff. Wah, wah. You cry all you want. If it's exactly on when I measure it, and then the $3,000 one is exactly on, or the $4,000 one sometimes off a little bit, you can't cry to me. Cry to the guy that made the expensive scope that was not as precise as the cheaper scope. It's not my fault. Why do you think I work with certain companies more than others? Because I like stuff that works and I don't want to go broke too, just like you guys, right? So how about this? Magnification, 7-35. So this is going to be, man, that's a lot of magnification on the top end. 35, that's more than my spotting scope. So this is going to work very well for spotting, for identifying your targets. A huge amount of what you do through your rifle optic, especially in long-range context, is looking at stuff. It's spotting. And so it's nice to have that capability, especially if the glass is going to be of the quality to utilize that power range. At 35 power, man, you should be able to zoom right in on what you're looking at. I know that for me out here, I have 900 yards in my yard, okay? 900 yards to shoot just in my front yard. And so when I'm shooting gophers, and tell you what, even at closer range, 35 power can be handy. I don't have 35 power in any of my stuff currently deployed that's ready to roll, right? But it's nice to have more magnification to be able to tell, is that a corn husk or is that a gopher? You need to positively ID your targets, guys, okay? You need to positively ID exactly what you're shooting at. Or like, I think it's a coyote, ain't going to cut it. You better know what you're shooting at, right? So 7-35 power. Objective diameter of the objective lens, 56 millimeters. Eye relief, 3.5 inches. This is the updated specs that should be hot off the press at the time of this posting, maybe. Field of view is 16.66 feet at 100 yards if you're backed off on 7 power, okay, which is still a usable field of view, okay? A lot of the deer hunting rifles I grew up with, where you would shoot movers anywhere from like practically point blank range to a couple hundred yards. A lot of times we typically take our variable scopes and set them right around 6 power. So 7 is right in that vicinity towards very usable for animate targets in real life if you want to double it for that. But if you really want to see what you're doing, you can zoom way in there. So I'm thinking a 7 to 35 power scope in my context would have been awesome for prairie dogs, for gophers, for varmint shooting, and for target shooting in certain applications. If you're trying to like see exactly the center of the aiming point, I know that a lot of people don't like to crank it up that high because they see every pulse on your heart, right? But that's nice to see that kind of resolution, with that kind of magnification. Now I'm going to put this up on the board whenever it comes in. I know there's one with my name on it, supposed to be coming in pretty soon, but this is going live now, and I want you to get a chance to get your foot in the door before everyone else does. So that's why I'm posting a little early, okay? But I intend to put the one when it comes in. I'm going to put it straight on the board. Of course, do all the tests, make sure the reticle's good, the tracking's good. But we're also going to do a resolution check. I'm curious to see how much better you're going to be able to, what better resolution you're going to have optically in terms of reading tiny stuff when I compare this to other models like the 5 to 25 or the 4 to 16 or just other models. What do we got here? Key differences. All right, so this is more information coming in on real time, believe it or not. Stand by, I'm going to open up my deal. All right, so what do we got here? The EP5 versus the EP5 Gen 2. So this is the Gen 2. The last EP5 was 5 to 25. This one is 7 to 35. The eye relief on the EP5 versus the Gen 2. The Gen 2 has better eye relief. Okay, just a little bit better eye relief, which is 3.5 inches on the EP5 Gen 2, this new one. The old one they both have the VPR reticle, which we'll talk about in a minute. They both have the Arken zero stop, and the weight, I think, is pretty, the weight on this one is a little heavier. The last one was 39.2 ounces. This one's 42 ounces. So that's a full-size ELR configured scope. Would you like the subtension diagrams? Why not? Hey, I'm sorry to be so rude and text and talk at the same time. This is literally coming in right now. Yes, sir. There we go. He's going to send us a resolution diagram. Then I'll share. I'm going to share some of these images with you. I'm going to read through the stats first. Or the specs. Okay, so the field of view, again, at 7 power, 16.66 feet. When you zoom all the way in, you're zooming the entire field of view of the scope. When you zoom in on 35 power to 100 yards, is looking at 3.34 feet. So you got a nice close-up view of your target. That's good for when you're zooming in. And when you need to zoom back, 7 is still kind of on that edge of usable for even normal stuff. You're not going to use this. This is not specially tuned for CQB though, guys, okay? Just in case you might, Rex, it's not for CQB. I know. It's not for CQB. Although, someone who's trained enough could probably figure out how to make it work for CQB anyways. There are tricks, Train more, then you can use whatever you want for CQB. How about that? Tube diameter, 34 millimeters, so it'll fit with all the rings and mounts they have. I really like their mounts. Turret adjustments, they have it in 0.1 MRAS or 0.25 minutes. Okay, so you got mils or minutes, your preference. Zero stop, that's the super turbo heavy duty. They call it the AZS zero stop system. I've never seen a zero stop more robust than the ones in the Arken scopes. And when I get the one in here, I'll show it to you. But it's not just going to slip. It's like a big ridge, like a square block of metal, tunk, tunk, and the screw bottoms out is not going past there, okay? So when it's a zero stop, it stops. Like I've done the thing where you just spin it like a helicopter and then punk, it stops. Like other optics, it'll smoke it out. you'll smoke your zero stop if you get Western. Well, Rex, who's going to ever do that? You guys need to shoot in a greater context, in a greater a plethora of contexts. Did you know that when you're in an adrenaline situation, if you're competing or if you're hunting or if you're like in a hurry or, like real life scenarios, that sometimes you lose what they call fine motor skill, coordination, and all you have is gross motor skill. So you turn into a caveman when you're turning your scope knobs. That's why it's good to be way overbuilt. I know that you're all delicate when you're calm. We all know this. But when you're like caveman mode, it becomes a problem, okay? So it has a super turbo robust zero stop. That's like one of my favorite features. Zero reset, yes. Elevation adjustment range. Okay, 32 MRADs. That's good. That's 110 minutes of angle. Just for comparison, I believe that from center to center, on a... Well, I know with that, because when you have a zero stop, it kind of changes how you should categorize the math. But like on a Schmidt & Bender PM2, 5 to 25 by 56 with 34 millimeter tube, which is the old standby, you have about 26, maybe 25 and a half, 26.1, depending on the mechanics of an available elevation adjustment. So this has, 6 or 7 more mils available in it than the Schmidt & Bender PM2 5 to 25. That makes it very useful at extreme long ranges, okay? Because you can push it out farther and still hold right on, or still remain at those higher power magnifications, because you can max out your turrets before you have to start using the reticle to add to what you dialed in on your turrets. So you don't have to, sometimes you have to back way off to see more of the mil scales if you're doing that. So it's nice to have, it's just good to have more elevation range. For those that are experienced in long range, that's a desirable feature. A windage adjustment range, 16 MRADs. Wow, 55 minutes of angle of windage. That's pretty good. Elevation adjustment per revolution is exactly 10 milrads. That is such a good feature. I hate it when it's some weird number and you are trying to count revolutions, right? And you just lose track of where you're at. I don't know. What's 17.3 plus 7? You know what I mean? So it's an even 10 milrads per revolution. Very logical. It's a digital logic kind of deal. Just boom, boom, boom. Really, you can count in tens, right? 10, 20, 30 each spin, right? Because it does go up to 30, doesn't it? 32, yep. Wow, crazy. Adjustment range per revolution, 10 MRADs or 25 minutes of angle, which is a nice even number too, because everyone can count in 25s if you have quarters growing up, right? Parallax. Side parallax adjustment from 25 yards to infinity. Okay, so that's plenty close to get your stuff done at 25 yards. Illuminated reticle feature of a red reticle. Okay, the turret rotation is counterclockwise. The length is 16 inches. Now, is that big? Schmidt & Bender PM2 is 16.54 inches. Schmidt & Bender PM2. Why is that important? Well, Rex, they should have made it shorter. Other scopes are shorter. Actually, there are certain proportions that are desirable for the geometry of the lens stacks. A little education here. Okay, so the Schmidt & Bender PM2 settled in on a very specific proportionality of the tube diameter and the lens diameters here and the angles, okay, for the objective and where it's got to cross. There's certain angles, like when you get shorter and fatter on your scope length, when you get those real compact ones, your angles are more radical, and trying to get stuff tuned in exactly in that focal plane becomes way more fussy. And your stuff, then the engineering parameters for the quality of the engineering needed to even make it kind of work are way higher. And so it's way more difficult to consistently execute that design in the factory. Schmidt & Bender, with their standby PM2 configuration has proportions, which is the same general size almost, right? It's a little bit longer, at least that's from tip to tip. I don't know exactly the distance between the lenses, okay? But when you're looking at that, those angles are nice when it's a longer design, more classic contours on an optic, that's easier. You have a lot more optical quality in terms of getting your light to crisscross in the same spot. That goes for the lenses, the apochromatically corrected glass with 3 different densities of glass that grab your light spectrum. Want to see the light spectrum? Woo! Woo! See us behind me? It's too far away, okay? I'll just take you over there anyways. Hold on. Whee! All right. Jesus Lord. So there's your reds. See, your red colors will change angle going through different densities of glass differently than your greens and your blues, okay? And so there's different densities of glass stacked, right? To where like, okay, most of your typical glass that's like super expensive is apochromatically corrected, which means there's at least 3 different densities sandwiched together in order to get all this stuff in the nice, tight focal plane. Now, I do believe that these are utilizing that high-end Japanese, it's a high-density glass. I don't know if it's apochromatically corrected or not. There's different terminology always coming out. But the idea is each different stack, whether it's 2 or 3 or whatever the chemistry of the glass is, you grab this from here to here, this bandwidth, and that'll crisscross at this angle, and then you have a different density of glass here with different geometry to get it to intersect in the exact same spot. If you just use one stack, or just one single monolithic material for your lens density, it's going to smear the image. It's not about the color of the image, it's about smearing. It'll look blurry, right? And so a longer scope tube like these guys very wisely picked. They didn't go for the temptation of the market push. And honestly, for the applications of target shooting, environment shooting, which is this is designed for, is this much of length or this much length, or is this much length difference like a huge deal for, man, it's just so huge I can't handle it? You have a lot of advantages to the classic design. So I see that they are 16 inches long. The Schmidt & Bender is 16, right in the same ballpark, just a little over 16 inches, which I see as being a good thing. You're going to be able to get a very clear, high quality image. Length, okay, the color, matte black, until you get a rattle can. Weight, 42 ounces. What's the weight on the Schmidt & Bender? Where's the weight? 37.57 ounces on the Schmidt & Bender. I will tell you probably where that weight went. In the glass, but also in the control group. I think that's where the Arken's a little heavier. But I'll tell you one thing. The mechanism is more rugged than a Schmidt & Bender. I can just tell you, the Schmidt & Bender has the Wetzlar 5-piece in your super high-end Kahles, Schmidt, Zeiss, Hensoldt, your really, really high dollar, $4,000 or $5,000 optics are very precise. However, they do that, they accomplish that through having a 5-piece adjustment mechanism. Just a little bit complex and it's kind of delicate. This is a 3-piece adjustment mechanism to my understanding, and looking at it, it's very robust. So it's more simple, but it's heavier built too. So you have in like the zero stop on a Schmidt & Bender or any of the other scopes usually have some kind of little delicate little, ring inside with tiny little screws. Then you need to remember to have your tiny little Allen wrenches that are just like you blow on it and it blows in the wind away. They're so small. You lose that screw in the grass, you're done. You're 100% done. You're never going to be able to get the zero stop set now. And if you're in the field, you are done. Let's say you're in Turkmenistan or in Kyrgyzstan on an ibex hunt, and you're adjusting you have to tighten your zero stop because something slipped because it's delicate. And you lose one of those screws or your little tiny wrench, you're done. You don't have that problem with this. This is robust. It's basically like very simple. You can do it with a quarter. You turn it loose, you pull it off, you line it up where you want it, you put it in. There's an Allen screw on top, and you just turn, and it's a pretty big one, and it's right on top. You can see it, one screw, and you just touch the bottom, and it's done. And literally, you don't have to cuss and sweat at the instructions. Way easier on the user end, too, to set that. Literally, I could explain it to a 7-year-old kid how to set the zero stop. And I've had grown men that are engineers just baffled for 3 hours trying to figure out their zero stop on their Schmidt & Bender PM2. Literal engineers. Smart guys. They sell me the scope. Rex, you take the scope. I'm like, all right. little tiny Pac-Man's got to flip, all this stuff that's in there. All right, so there's that story. So the weight is a little more robust, but that's their super heavy duty control group, zero stop mechanism and all that, okay? I'm guessing. And if it's a little, I don't know if the walls on the tubes are thicker, but that's good. It's good to be robust, right? And especially, you already got a heavy target rifle, right? So you kind of just bought into the weight thing at that point. And for applications of bench rest shooting, prone long range target shooting, varmint shooting from a static position, things like that, weight is actually your friend in those categories, right? Sunshade, yes, it is threaded for sunshade. That's cool. And I do believe they come with like a nice rubberized cap. And I've been locating too. I'll see if this works. I'm not sure. Been trying to find an ARD that works on these. The anti-reflection device, so-called. So there's the stats. So let's look at you can look at the general profile of the scope here. Very similarly profiled to the SH4, a little longer, I think, and the EP5 Gen 1. It looks kind of the same, so why change it if it works so dang good, right? And that, I'm gonna share this image with you so that you can see. It's hard to describe everything, right? Okay, so we're gonna look at the VPR mill illuminated. So here's the reticle. And I'll tell you, that's an effective reticle. They don't have a huge amount of reticle choices. But the VPR is, I think, what you call a well-balanced reticle for that whole genre of scopes, for a long-range scope. You have first off, a small aiming point in the center, a little tiny dot. You have the little crosses adjacent to it, so you have all your markings there. If you really zoom in, there's a matter of preference whether they like that dot kind of clean there to see a near miss or to see exactly what's happening, or so it's not obstructing the target, depending on what kind of shooting you're doing. I know for varmint hunting, I like actually kind of a clean center area because I dial stuff in when I'm varmint hunting, and I get it dialed right in. I just want to make sure it's right on the spot, and sometimes the reticle can sort of get in the way depending on how far and small the target. For tiny targets, also with water bottles too. So it's a niche preference, I'll admit that. But you do have a little bit of space around that center aiming point to be able to see a tiny target, okay? Then let's go down the vertical subtensions of the spine of the reticle. We have 1 mil, then the second mil is marked, 3 mils, 4 mils, 5 mils, and so every other one is marked, but each row is a mil apart. That makes it easy to count. So you just count to 5, and there you go, in between 4 and 6, right? Or you get to 6, and then you have a heavier dot there on each mil going laterally on the grid portion, and you go down all the way to 12 mils, and it's in a cone shape. I'm going to call it a cone shape deal there. If you look on the very bottom, you have tenths at the very bottom, and I believe the reason, I would imagine they'd put it down there for this application. Some guys like to have it in the middle, your real fine milling, because then you don't have to reestablish a whole new firing position. There's different philosophy of having this stuff kind of out of the way too, so that you have more of a clear observation area. So there's different preferences there, different trains of thought, but you have the ability here in the optic vertically to go ahead and you can mill a target, and then you have your 10th mil, looks like 10th mils, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yep. So you still have your 10th mil increments there, and you have them laterally on the sides between 6, 7, and 8. So between 6 and 8 mils, you have your 10th mil increments so that you can do your firing solution, or you can determine your range to the target. How do you do that? The size of the target in inches times 25.4 divided by the mils if you want the meters. Or you can take the target size in inches times 27.7 and divide that by however many mils the target takes up in the scope. That'll tell you the range in yards. So 27.7 is the constant for that one for yards. So anyways, steadiometric ranging, right? You can do that. And I work with both, so I sometimes misspeak, forgive me, because I got both of them for classes, right? So we have the grid. We have a relatively straightforward spine with half mil marks there. The horizontal subtensions, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mils going up. So you can do what some guys might call a reverse image zero, where you actually zero up higher on there, or maybe a zero at like 500, kind of an idea, right? There's different ways for extreme long range, like ultra long range applications. You can utilize the top subtensions as an aiming point, and then the entire thing from top to bottom is your drop, right? And so you just add 5 to those numbers there. So it's a reticle that's highly flexible. I think it's a pretty well balanced reticle for most normal people. Of course, there's always different preferences, and you can look at the minute of angle one as well. How about this? So don't forget, guys, if you use code REX, you will get, like, how much did they say off it was? It is the best deal online if you use code REX. That's basically what it is. Like I told them, I want whatever the best deal is on anywhere's online to be the code REX. So that keeps it simple for you. You don't have to shop all over the place and see which codes, just whatever. If it's cheaper somewhere, then REX, make that REX code that much. So right now, what did he just tell me? Let me get back in my stupid messaging app, turbo encrypted whatever thing. Where did he say that? Okay. So the sale on this scope when it goes live is going to be $799.99, so $800. If you use code REX, it'll be $599 for a 7 to 35 power scope with Japanese glass. And I'm telling, and just I would imagine, I haven't seen this one in my hands yet, but based on their consistent performance over the last few years at least, okay, there's been some that, like, you know, this one's a little better, this one's a little better, you know, whatever. Like, there's tiny subtleties between the models, but they're all super rugged and very precise. There's a tiny difference in resolution sometimes, but even this, I mean, they're very consistent quality. So I'm expecting, based on what I've seen before, that this 7 to 35 will be executed well, even though it's a challenging deal. So there's other, you guys might ask questions about, what about the models where you have more of a spread of numbers? Okay, so that has to do with your zoom ratio, right? So 7 to 35, some scopes might have like 3 to 30, right? Nowadays, that's possible to do, but you run into the same quality parameters that are difficult to execute consistently in the factory. So when you have a really spread out zoom, like when you have a really low number and a really high number, towards the edges, and there's stuff that's hard to execute with that in terms of carving that lens to, I mean, because the stuff is proportionally kind of, man, there's certain, like we talked about earlier, the proportionality is just not appropriate for those ranges. So they can do it and print that stat. And yes, the magnification will go really low and really high, but you lose quality. And that's why ones that work well are very high dollar scopes, where they're like really in the ones that work well. And like Schmidt-Bender and some of those outfits can kind of keep up with that. But like, even there, the old classic proportions, it's just geometry, guys. Right? Now, in the future, as they get more and more precise with manufacturing tolerances and all that stuff, and with their assembly and the quality control, maybe they'll be more consistently easy to execute that. However, I think that 7 to 35 is a pretty big spread of numbers. What's 7 divided by 35? That's a 5 times zoom. It's a pretty big zoom ratio, right? So can you get one wider? You could, but you're going to potentially lose some quality there. And the consistency between model to model will vary quite a bit then. So for whatever it's worth, use code REX. I'm going to post this before it's too late, so that you can grab one while they're still here. But use code REX and you'll get $150 off or whatever. It's a lot of money to save. Okay, so if you appreciate that, let me know below. I'll share the link below too for you guys, of course. And if you have any questions on this, just stand by for the review. As soon as mine comes in, I have all my stuff kind of already set up. It'll be relatively simple. Put it on the jig and check some of the mechanical stuff, and then we'll put it on a rifle and actually use it. I have a use for that scope, believe it or not. I have a use for that scope. I have a very specific family of vermin that lives right in between 700 and 900 yards where I can see out there in the corner. And it'd be nice to have, for that exact deal being really far away, like it'd be nice to be able to zoom in to make darn sure I could probably spot them better. You can't kill it if you can't find it and see it, man. You know what I mean? So there is use for higher power. And I got a bench right there, so I can just tunk. Right? A lot of fun. All right, I'll post this so you can see it. Rex out.